Theodore Ted Kaczynski, popularly known as the Unabomber, died at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, at the age of 81 by way of suicide. Kaczynski, who was reportedly suffering late-stage cancer, was serving prison time following a 17-year spree of using self-made bombs to detonate at airports and universities from May 25, 1978 to April 24, 1995, due to his utter disdain for, quote, leftists, quote, conservatives, as well as how the advancement of technology has affected human life, which is largely highlighted in the 35,000-word manifesto he wrote to be released to news outlets. Regarding his detest toward technology, Kaczynski wrote in his manifesto, quote, "It is well known that crowding increases stress and aggression. The degree of crowding that exists today and the isolation of man from nature are consequences of technical progress. All pre-industrial societies were predominantly rural. The Industrial Revolution vastly increased the size of cities and the proportion of the population that lives in them. And modern agricultural technology has made it possible for the earth to support a far denser population than it ever did before. Also, technology exacerbates the effect of crowding because it puts increased disruptive powers in people's hands. For example, a variety of noise-making devices, power mowers, radios, motorcycles, etc. If the use of these devices is unrestricted, people who want peace and quiet are frustrated by the noise. If their use is restricted, people who use the devices are frustrated by the regulations. But if these machines had never been invented, there would have been no conflict and no frustration generated by them." From a previous mental assessment administered to Kaczynski, it was determined by Dr. Sally Johnson that he experienced paranoid schizophrenia. Johnson based her diagnosis largely on two factors of his delusional thinking, which included, quote, involving being controlled by modern technology and, quote, dysfunction in life, particularly his inability to establish a relationship with the female, was directly the result of extreme psychological verbal abuse by his parents. In addition, Johnson believed that Kaczynski's, quote, social and occupational dysfunction in the areas of work, interpersonal relations, and possibly at times self-care contribute to the diagnosis. The paranoid portion of his diagnosis derived from his resentment and anger toward modern technology, which caused an unquenchable desire to resort to violence in order to express these emotions. From the mind of Kaczynski, his psychotic behavior and actions that followed were justified due to perceived threat that an object, in this case, modern technology, was out to get him. Therefore, he had to retaliate. Kaczynski also suffered from the persecutory nature of paranoia, which means that he believed that someone or something was trying to harm, mistreat, or spy on him. Symptoms of persecutory delusions include excess worry, feeling threatened without reason, frequently reporting to authorities, and constantly seeking safety, which could be the motive behind both the manifesto as well as seeking shelter in a secluded area in the woods outside of Lincoln, Montana. During his psychiatric evaluation with Dr. Johnson, Kaczynski described his childhood as, quote, relatively uneventful until the age of 8 or 9, quote, and his interactions with people as, quote, fearful and, quote, socially reserved. While he stated that he would receive occasional spankings as a child, he did not feel they were excessive or cruel. However, he was affected by the extreme verbal abuse by his parents and did not realize that it was taking such a toll on him emotionally until he was in his 20s. He did admit, though, in other conversations and writings, that he was rebellious and could be difficult to get along with. With an IQ claimed to be within the 160 to 170 range, he would go on to be accepted into Harvard University at the age of 16 and graduate at 20 with a degree in mathematics. By the time he was 25, Kaczynski had received both his master's and Ph.D. degrees from the University of Michigan. During his evaluation, Kaczynski stated that he had no religious affiliation. In a letter written while in prison, dated September 28, 2002, Ted stated, quote, "I think there probably does not exist anything that could reasonably be described as God. The Bible has been used as a tool to help keep human behavior in check, but it certainly was not the first such tool. Virtually every society has had some tools for keeping human behavior in check, though in many cases the tools have been very crude and simple. The philosophy or religion of Confucianism predates the Bible, or at least parts of it, and was probably an equally sophisticated tool for keeping human behavior in check. But the techniques of propaganda that exist today, backed by the electronic media and the modern printing press, far surpass the Bible, Confucianism, anything else that has existed in the past." While at Harvard, Kaczynski began to have fantasies of living a primitive life and act as an agitator with the motive of leading mobs in revolutionary violence. His anger began in high school and continued to boil in college, and this became worse when he felt that he could not express his anger openly. As a result, this turned into feelings of seeking revenge. Kaczynski discussed in his evaluation with Johnson that he started to experience the fetishes of being a female during his 5th year of study at the University of Michigan, even going as far as desiring to undergo sex change surgery and scheduling an appointment to discuss this desire. In the waiting room before meeting with the doctor, Kaczynski became anxious and humiliated of even discussing the matter, and instead discussed his depression and anxiety about possibly being drafted into the military. Kaczynski felt anger, shame, and rage after leaving the appointment and described this being a turning point in his life. Kaczynski wrote, "As I walked away from the building afterwards, I felt disgusted about what my uncontrolled sexual cravings had almost led me to do, and I felt humiliated, and I violently hated this psychiatrist. Just then there came a major turning point in my life. Like a phoenix, I burst from the ashes of my despair to a glorious new hope. I wanted to kill that psychiatrist because the future looked utterly empty to me. I felt I wouldn't care if I died. And so I said to myself, why not really kill the psychiatrist and anyone else whom I hate? What is important is not the words that ran through my mind, but the way I felt about them. What was entirely new was the fact that I really felt I could kill someone. My very hopelessness had liberated me because I no longer cared about death. I no longer cared about consequences. And I said to myself that I really could break out of my rut in life and do things that were daring, irresponsible, or criminal. Kaczynski's thoughts of social rejection created an increased quest for freedom and revenge, which further describes the possible origins of this persecutory behavior. His solution to these swelling urges was to wreak havoc against the two areas in which he felt that opposed his mission to end technological development and its interference with human civilization: universities and airports. Hence, the FBI and ATF giving the Unabomber name, which was a combination of the terms university and airplane bomber. Some of these chosen areas during his crime spree included the University of Illinois, Chicago, Circle Campus in 1978, Northwestern University in 1979, American Airlines Flight 444 flying from Chicago to Washington, D.C. in 1979, University of Utah in Salt Lake City in 1981, Vanderbilt University in 1982, and the University of California, Berkeley in 1985, as well as bombs mailed to university professors, scientists, tech workers, and aircraft employees. On April 3rd, 1996, Kaczynski was arrested in his cabin outside of Lincoln, Montana. In his cabin, investigators found a wealth of bomb components, which included 40,000 handwritten journal pages that included bomb-making experiments and descriptions of Unabomber crimes, as well as one live bomb ready for mailing. Ironically, although he sought isolation from society, his cry for attention by having the manifesto published in the Washington Post as well as other news outlets allowed numerous tips of people finding linguistic similarities in his other writings. The most dooming tip came from his very brother, David, which led to Ted's arrest. His, quote, harassed and harmed by modern technology, as stated in his psychological evaluation, created an uncontrollable quest to terminate these advancements, which subsequently resulted in the deaths of 3 people and the injuries of 23 others. As a result of his crimes, Kaczynski was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole in 1998, which he served until committing suicide on June 10th, 2023. Thank you for watching a forensic psychologist's take on the mind of Ted Kaczynski. If you're interested in more videos like this, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below.